covered there, some of it will carry over to creating vertex shaders. So what effect I want to tackle today is this one here. Let me pull it up for you guys. I did a bit of a shader dump the other day in our Alpha Academy Discord, and this is what we had. So we had some interesting shaders dropped. These are, if you remember, fragment shaders. So we have the crossfade shader. It's just changing the appearance of, the visual appearance, the color of the surface of the object. So that is a fragment shader. Same thing with these ones here. This one, for example, is a nice dissolve effect that if you increase the noise scale, it becomes a pixelated loading in and out effect. I know that Virgil van Gogh liked that once. I thought I'd dump that into the thing as well. So this is the pixelated load in. Again, fragment shaders. So that's what we covered last time. But today we're going to decipher a couple interesting techniques, and it's going to get a little advanced. So, bear with me when it does. The the effect we want to discuss first is this one. So what is happening here? This is a vertex shader. It is changing the mesh via the material editor. So we don't have to do any code per se, but it's literally changing the vertex positions of a surface via the shader. And we are combining it with some fragment techniques, of course, as well. But that's one of the things. And the other technique I want to talk about today is this one here. So this is a screen grab from Unity's website that shows you how they make the code for a given node, a shader node. So Unity has this thing called shader graph, and in there are some nodes such as the radial shear node, and they describe the math behind that, the actual function, the programming behind it. So we can recreate it via code, which we can do in Effect House as well. We can literally take this radial shear code, which is what I did to recreate the radial shear effect, right? Radial shear, hey, it's working in Effect House now. And then if we have time, we will also take a look at kind of combining these techniques to create a cartoonish water effect. Potentially, we might dive into something else as well. We'll see where things take us, but this is what you should be able to do with the combination of these techniques. Okay, so that being said, the shader dump is live. Worth checking that out in the Discord. A lot of cool shader effects that you could use for a plethora of things. The blurring the images, you could have like a logo that's blurred, and then the user has to guess what that logo is, and then it unblurs after the guess has been made, this kind of thing, right? So let's jump in to how we can understand what a vertex shader does. So I've got a new Effect House project open. Feel free to follow along with yours as well if you'd like. I'm just going to get rid of these basic things here, and I'm just going to create a custom material, just an empty material. That is how you get started with creating shaders. So I've got an empty material here, and I'm just going to call this my Vertex Shader Lesson Mat for material. Excuse me, got a little cough there. Okay, so as we can see, the actual material has been opened up in our material editor. Here it is. Our main graph is shown here, and there's the material editor. Now, last time, like I said, we talked about changing the color of the surface, and we might do a rerun of that lesson in the future so that people who missed it can catch it, and we'll record that one as well. But today we're going to discuss this one. The world position, normal and tangent. These together create a vertex shader. This one is a fragment. This is our vertex. So what's essentially happening here is kind of like last time when we talked about the pixel-wise, pixel by pixel creation of a shader. So we said the bottom left pixel should be this color, then this next pixel should be this different color. With the shader here, we are taking the position or the normal and the tangent of each vertex of a mesh, and doing some math operation on it instead. So let's bring a mesh in, and I have a special mesh here. I'll see if I can share that mesh with you guys in the Discord as well, so that if you want to use this particular mesh, you feel free to. I'm just going to open that one up 1 second. Excuse me. Vertex projects. We got our shader projects and tune water assets, divided plane. There we go. So I'm going to just drop that in the chat. Hopefully that's not too big. There we go. Okay, so there is the divided plane FBX file. So what is this file? I'm just going to import it here. So this divided plane, it's just a flat plane that's been cut up into a bunch of subdivisions. Now the reason for that is we're going to be manipulating the vertices of it. If we use just a quad, the basic plane that's available in Effect House, it has 4 vertices, 1 on each corner, and we would only be able to manipulate those 4. To do anything beyond that, we need a computator, which I don't think Effect House is actually capable of doing. So we're going to focus on the divided plane here. So this divided plane has, like, I think it's more dense than the grid here is shown in Effect House, but a lot of vertices to work with. So now we can manipulate it. So let's start by taking a look at a basic manipulation. So the way shaders are going to work is they're going to go through every vertex and operate on all of them in a sequence. So if we were to take, for example, our world position and just set it to a position attribute. So this is in world space. We're saying, okay, take the position of this vertex at this particular index and set it to itself, basically. That's all we've done. So obviously nothing's going to happen. So let's apply this material to this plane so that we can actually see any change. So I'm going to take this Vertex Shader lesson mat and apply it to this divided plane so we can start to see those changes. Okay, so nothing's going to change yet, obviously. So what we're going to do is we're going to make some calculations on this position attribute. So let's say, for example, we do an add function. And it's a vertex 3. It's a vector 3, I should say, because x, y, z, 3D space position. These shaders, by the way, will work on 2D objects as well. Just keep in mind the math might give you a different result. So I'm going to just do the position of that vertex. So index 0, and then again, these shaders cycle through all of them. And I'm just going to say in the y, let's just add 1, for example. I don't know if you noticed that, but as you can see, it has taken every single vertex on this divided plane and moved it up 1 unit in the y. So I'm just going to make sure this concept is understood. So we have our meshes, and what's going to happen is it's going to take a look at this vertex here, and in our particular mesh, it's been, it's divided several times, so there's a bunch of vertices, but essentially it's going to take each vertex step by step, operate on this, then it'll move on to the next one, the next one, next one, next one, next one, next one. It'll operate across all of the vertices. And so what we just did is a uniform operation across every vertex. We just increased the y position by 1. That's what we've done. But the vertex that we saw earlier was kind of interactive. It looked kind of cool, like it was showing an indent of what the user could manipulate. So if we saw, for example, that video again, if I pull it up here, shader dump, what is happening in this video? Let's see. So what we have here, first, breaking this effect down, we have a bunch of noise. So we have a noisy elevation for this terrain. So this is the divided plane, and we randomly moved up different parts of it in the y position. Then we are going to basically say, wherever this ball is located, or in this ball could be the player, This works really well in like a snow environment. Like this is how you can make snow trails, basically, indents in snow, for example. The player, as they step in a portion of that location, we're going to feed into the shader and say, make that part flat. Do not raise that part. So this is where we're going to have to get a little logical, but the concept is using that. We're raising everything, and we made it a little noisy, and then we're going to decrease this one region in our plane. So how would we tackle that? All right. So let's take a look first at noise. We didn't cover noise last time, so this will be an excellent opportunity to do so. So we have these wonderful noise nodes, and they are really powerful when you're trying to create procedural shaders. So we can make like an entire world map, and it will have memory based on a noise map. So you can make like this, you know, all these hills and all these things, entire world, just procedural, and, you know, return to positions that you previously had. So with a lot less work this way. It just depends how you utilize this noise. So let's say we go with a simple noise or gradient noise. I think those two will work pretty well. Voronoi is, you know, you could still use it, but it'll look a little weird for the effect we're going for. So the simple noise is pretty uniform distribution, randomness. The Voronoi is like a bunch of circles all around, right? A bunch of noisy circles that you can kind of rotate and tilt a little bit. And then you have the gradient noise, which is like these rolling like hills all around. So that might look good, but simple noise makes sense for us. Now, what do these noises do exactly? So you feed in a coordinate, and the coordinate's going to be from our, for example, our texture coordinate, the map from each vertex, basically. And then it will take that and randomize that value by some noise scale. So the more the noise scale is, the more random, the more, you know, all over the place it could be. Oh, I think we have some questions. Yes, Leslie, they are recorded. Now, so we're going to start with a noise scale of 0 and 0, which means no noise, basically, so that you can kind of see what will be the result. So we're going to go ahead and say, okay, let's take the texture coordinate. So this will allow us to get, sorry, this will allow us to get all the vertex positions, right, from 0 all the way to the end. All right, I'm Game Plus 40. Thank you for joining. Okay, so we're going to use this to get some random noise value, and we're just going to increase the y of our divided plane by that random noise. If we increase the x, y, and z, then it'll get shifted in the x and the z, which is going to be a little weird. We're the goddamn rugby. Hey, Muzinho, not doing world records today. So I'm going to, we're going to combine this, but in shader graph, if we want to combine, we'll have to combine like, we'll have to use the append function here. So I'm gonna use the append node and append into a 3D vector, right? So I'm just gonna go right to the y value and put that in there. So now we are getting each vertex position, basically going through via the texture coordinate. The scaling is set to 0, so nothing's happened yet. So now let's just say we just, you know, noise it up a little bit. So now it's a little bit noisy. It's not perfectly flat anymore, but very hard to see. So let's increase the noise a little bit more. Excuse me. There we go. Now it's starting to show a little bit more, and we can multiply this by some factor just to make it a little more, to make it stand out more. So we can multiply before or after this. Either one is fine. So I'm just going to add some multiplying factor so that it doesn't, you know, it's a little bit more viewable to us. So I'm just going to multiply this by, let's say, Okay, so you can start to see how there is that random kind of raising of certain parts more than others. So we've made it kind of just random clumps. So this works really well for snow, for example. So, and I can extend this even further. Let's say if we did 50, then you can really see how this mesh is being vertically deformed randomly. And as we increase the scale, that randomness becomes more fine. So if we jump from 3 to 30, for example, you can see how it looks very noisy now. Right? Very, very random, but still uniformly distributed because it is a simple noise node. Okay, so let's go back to 3. I think 30 is a bit too much, and then 50 for the noise scale is a little bit much. So let's go down to 5. Okay, so there we have it. We now have noise being used in offsetting the vertical position of our vertices. Now, that being said, are there any questions up to this point? Okay, right on. So let's go ahead and tackle the next set. This part is going to be more based on the fragment section, but essentially what we want to achieve is, say, change the color of the surface based on the height of a particular vertex. So the higher up it is, it's going to be one color. The lower down, it'll be like a dirt color. And we can use textures for this as well. We'll start with colors for now, and then we'll shift that over. So again, if we want to color our shader here, we can let's say we create a color node, or let's start with an if. We'll do an if node. Okay, and this will want to be a color. So I'm just gonna quickly bring in a color input to this so that I can change this if statement, if node a little bit. Okay, there's the structure of the if node that I like. Okay, so we're gonna say, okay, given the position of a particular vertex being higher or lower than a certain amount, we're going to give a different color, right? That's what the if statement will allow us to do. So let's take a look. So let's say we have this y position, so we want just the y, right? So we had our texture coordinates, simple noise, multiply, and we then combined it into a 3D vector, but we're going to just take the y before we do all that here, and we'll say if the y is greater than 0.5, let's say for example, if the y is greater than 0.5, we will have it be white and fully opaque. If it's equal, we'll have it white, fully opaque. Yeah, we can keep that because that won't be much of a difference. But if it is less, we'll make it brown, for example. Right? So that's what this if statement is going to do. It's going to essentially check the y position, and it's going to say if it's greater than 0.5, and you can adjust this. You can make these exposed variables and alter them as you please, and that'll determine the color of each pixel. And as we adjust this in real time, you can see that change. So let's say instead of 0.5, we said 0.6, right? As this number increases, the area which will be colored brown will increase as well, as you can see. So if the height is less than 1, right? If A is less than B, color that portion, color those vertices brown. In this video recorded, as I can't hear your sound, there are sounds when I click on other things, but I can't hear any sound on the live stream. Oh, interesting. It does say that the live is being... can anyone hear me on the live? Is my voice coming through? Hey, Nurse Ratchet. We're just doing a lesson for my Discord on Effect House, how to make filters. You hear me? Have you edited Discord audio settings? I have not. You're able to hear me both? Okay. So Game Plus, I'm not sure why you're not able to hear me on the live, but others can hear me, so that means that in the recording it should be present. Perfect. So this is one way we can create some cool kind of effects. And if it wasn't brown, for example, we did blue, you know, it would be like a water level for a terrain, right? Like you can start to see how you can maybe create like a procedural terrain this way. Anyways, we'll stick with brown for the concept of kind of the walking path, and we'll say if it's less than 0.25. Let's say that. So very, very few places are actually that low. Maybe even 2 I can get away with. Yeah, okay, so basically I've picked a height. Everything is above that height. Can we use multiple if? Yes, you can, Duong. 100% you can use multiple if statements. And so this allows us to control the color. This is going to be helpful in seeing the effect that we're making. As the ball moves closer to it, this kind of thing that we will be able to know. Okay, so now let's create an interaction with this material. We're going to take this to another level, right? So we're going to basically have some object that's going to communicate with the shader about its position. And then let us know to indent that portion of the ground. Essentially ignore that portion of the ground. So let's say we have a little ball. Let's bring a sphere into the world. Around here somewhere. And I'm going to take this camera and just move it back a bit so that I can see the whole. Okay, this thing is. Gizmos here are really rough. There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly create a regular material for this sphere so that we can distinguish it a little bit easier. And a simple lighting material is just a basic material. I'm just going to change it to red so we can see the ball. It's hanging out over there. Yeah, check out the TikTok live stream Game Plus if you can't hear me in the Discord. Okay, so here we've got our sphere. Right now it's not doing anything, so we're going to have it communicate with our shader. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to create a parameter in our shader code. So this little 3 my items here, click on that, and boom, it starts to show some options here. So my parameters, these are variables that we can edit, that we can send information to. We cannot get from them, but we can get as well. Sorry, but we cannot do certain things that I'll talk about later. Anyways, so we want to create here a vector 3, and this will be our player position essentially. So this player position is basically going to dictate where the indent is. And we'll say, okay, player position, this node is here. We just click here and we get a node for it that will provide us the value that we can set in our visual scripting graphs. So this one, what it's going to do essentially, here, we've done this thing where we just add the Y position based on some noise. We're adding that to this. However, we could add a little bit of logic here prior to this, such that we check the distance a given pixel, a given vertex is from the player. And based on that, we can say, if it's a certain distance away, if it's too far, ignore it, don't do anything different. If it's too close, do not add. Just add 0 or something like that. Excuse me. So this input that we've given for our position attribute, we said we're going to add this noise. We're going to actually interrupt this with an if. We're going to say, let's cut this out. So it's all flat again. We're going to say, okay, the result of this if is going to go to this add. And if the player position, right? The player position or I should say if the distance from, so let's go this distance from this kind of thing So given a player position, if the distance is, let's say, the radius will make, let's just try the number 1 for now. We'll mess around with this number. But so essentially here what we're going to do in this if statement is we're going to check the distance. If the distance is, let's say, greater than 1, we will do like we were doing before, the random noise augmentation. If it's equal or less than, we will not add anything to our position attribute. If the distance is less than 1, that means it's very close to the sphere. We will say 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. We are not adding anything to the vertex's position. But the distance between the player is what needs to be updated via our visual script. So let's add that bit now, and we'll come back and review all this in a moment as well. So in our visual script, we'll say let's just use an update for now. We'll say, okay, this material that we have, the vertex shader, we can set this value. So we take the player position, set player position like so, boom, and we're just going to see the sphere. We're going to get its position like so, and put that right in there. That's all we have to do. Shader is doing most of the work. So we're going to take the material, we're going to set one of its values, the only variable that it has, the only parameter it has, the player position. We're going to just get the sphere position for that. So if we go back to this material, we might want to change this 1 up here a bit to see a more drastic result, but essentially it's going to be judged based on this. Now it won't show up a live change to a mesh in the scene view. You will only see it in the preview panel. You will only see it in the game view. So let's increase this to maybe 5. Let's see. Okay, let's try that out. Okay, let me mess around with this for a second. Let me see if we get this right. Got the noise. Everything is scaled up. Let's move it up, and then when let's do player position distance from that to that. Let's do 25. Okay, yeah, it is working. It is working. Okay, my bad. I just didn't notice it. It was very difficult to tell. Okay, so it is working, but our fragment color could maybe be a little bit higher. Let's see. Let's put that up to 5. Oh, right. I've got to, our fragment color is not updating because we're still referencing this. We should be referencing the result of this instead. I think, wait a minute. I think we should be referencing the result of this instead. And then this we can maybe split. So let's split this, and we just take the y of the end result. There we go. And it's greater than, let's go 2.5. Yeah, or just 2. 2 should be enough. Yes, okay, there we go. Now we got the shader working right. And I'll explain the changes I made here in a second, but here we are. So now this ball, as you can see, it won't update in the scene view, but if you look at the game view panel, you can see how as the ball moves towards the ground, it leaves its indent sort of in the snow, essentially. Here we go, right? And there you have it. You have now created an interactive shader using a combination of techniques. So now let's review the shader in a moment, but before I do, if there are any questions, please do not hesitate. Any confusion that you may have, any part you want me to cover in detail, please let me know. Excuse me. Okay, so with that said, what did we do here? What are the changes that we made to make this functional? Let's review that real quick. like a puppy pouncing in snow. Exactly. There's a lot of things you can make. There's whole games you can make with just this mechanic. But it's excellent for walking in the snow, leaving footprints, for example, somewhere. This is a one way to create that, high fidelity effect. Right now I'm just using a simple, distance from the player. That will always create a circle. But you can use different mechanisms to create this trail. You can make it, adjust the logic so it's multiple positions that are being checked against, and it's like a long trail being left behind, not just one spot. So many things you can do, but this is the giving me some good ideas to create. That's what I like to hear, Haley. Right on. So let's review the code here. See, the weird part is I've created interactive shaders, but never thought of even try doing stuff like this with them. I know it's wild the things you can do. So what did we do? Here we have it. I don't know why I have two of these here, but let's go from here. So we have our shader. This is all we started with. And now we created an interactive kind of walking in the snow, ball rolling in the snow kind of thing. So we have our position attribute. Initially, we just had position attribute go straight in to the world position of each vertex. Remember, this node is operating on every single vertex on our mesh. Right now I'm using a plane. You could be using a cube. You could be using a sphere. You could be using a 3D model. That's more complicated, right? You can manipulate any kind of mesh that you'd like. So now what we're doing is we are adding to that position. So we take the vertex. So it goes like, for example, this top corner vertex here. It will look at that and it will do this operation on that vertex, and then move to the next vertex, do this operation, move to the next vertex, do this operation, and so forth. So here, the position where it's originally located is at 0 in the y, and we're going to add to the way we've structured the logic only to its y position, right? Because it's a plane, it makes a bit more sense for us to just vertically displace it. So what we did was we said, okay, let's get a coordinate node so that we can run through each vertex's noise, so we can apply some noise to each vertex position. And then the noise scale here, again, these properties, you can like make them into variables and adjust them in the material so that you have more control over it. You don't have to go into the shader to do it, but the texture coordinates, we go through some noise node. We multiplied the result of that by 5 just to make it a bit more visible to us. We made that, constructed that into a vector 3. X is going to be 0, Z is going to be 0. We don't want to adjust the X and Z position, just the Y. And we put that through an if node. So what is that if checking? So the if is checking the distance each vertex is from the player's position. So it was going to check the distance from this corner vertex to the sphere, and then this vertex next to the corner vertex to the sphere. It'll check the distance between those two, and it will say if the distance between that and the player is less than 10, if it's greater than 10, it will run through this noise system that we created, right? Every vertex gets some random value noised in the Y, and we're going to add that to its existing position so it gets moved up a little bit. Otherwise, if the distance is less than 10 or equal to 10, we are going to not do that. We're going to say 0, 0, 0. We're going to only add 0, 0, 0, which means we're not going to add anything. So it'll be at its base position of 0, 0, 0. That will then, we are going to run through this whole system. We're also creating a fragment shader at the same time. We are saying that we're going to take the result of this addition, this map that we've made, and we'll say if the Y position, because we split the result, we split it, X, Y, and Z, say the Y, if the Y is greater than 0.2, it'll be 1, 1, 1. If it's equal, it'll be 1, 1, 1, which is white. This is the color white. If you remember from our previous lesson, RGB 1, 1, 1 in all is just equal to white. These, if you want it to be a little bit more obvious, we can use like an actual color, for example, to represent this a little bit better so that you can see that there, something like that. but that's essentially what's, it's the same thing. And we said if the Y position is less than 0.2 in the world, then it's brown, right? Just make it very obvious, like dirt color. And then boom, apply that to the fragment section of our shader. That is all that's needed to be done. We now have an interactive shader because in the visual scripting, we're updating that player position variable. We update our shader so that it updates to match our sphere's position. And you can see that update really only shows in the game view. It's not going to show in the scene view, but you can see how it's updating that kind of thing. This is, and again, this is what the user will see in the end, right? So it's kind of cool. You can have this interactive effect, and I'll just show you kind of what the result of some of this logic is, because keep in mind, this logic that we made is all happening in world space. So that means if I took this plane and I moved it up, well, everything will be above 0.2 now. If I move it down, everything will be below 0.2, right? That was our fragment logic. It's just the Y position of each vertex. And these Y positions are in world space. So boom, you're going to have this again, some cool ideas. I'm sure you guys are all spinning in your head right now what you can do with something like that as well, but that's the idea, right? That's the concept. It's in world space. So if I move the whole plane down, every vertex, even after the noise adding its Y position, is going to be below 0.2. Thus, everything is brown. Okay. Any questions about that? Any particular portion was confusing, I can review for anyone who missed it. But that being said, that is chapter 1 of today's lesson. We are going to tackle some other stuff here in a moment. But before I do, I know some people in chat want to see me spin a ball. Sure, why not? All right. I don't know if it'll show up per se, but let's give it a go. Whoa. There you go. All right. We got some of the younger fans in the audience right now too. All right. So the next thing we want to tackle is kind of this advanced concept of being able to learn on your own a little bit as well, right? So is it possible to control the position of vertices using an image? 100% Haley. That is an interesting concept. I think that could be a really fun idea for a shader. And we might be able to do that really quickly. So the concept Haley brought up might be something that you'll all like to try. So let's say I bring in an image. I'll download, and then let's see. Let me just use this like Pleasantville image, for example. So I have this image for Pleasantville, and one of the things you could do, for example, is say, based on the color of the pixel from a texture, offset the height of something so that if it's very dark, it's low. If it's very bright, it's higher up. Or if it's red, it's really high. But if it's blue, it's really low. Whatever you want to do, right? So how would we do something like that, though? That's a very cool idea for shader. So I'm gonna just actually, let's create a new project for that. But I'm gonna see if I can save this one as well. Save this project, and I'll share these project files with all of you. But this one actually is available already in the shader dump, so I'm not going to bother saving this one. Let me just create a new project to show you this concept. So let's say I have this image of Pleasantville, and just so that you can see it kind of blown up, this is what it looks like. So this image, I'm going to do some manipulation on our divided plane based on that image. So that's a very cool concept, Haley. We're going to try that out. All right, where is the Effect House projects folder? 1 second. Let me bring in our divided plane again. Might be the ideal use case for this. Assets, divided plane. Boom, there we go. Okay, so we got our plane and we got our image this time. looking good. So for us to make this work, again, we're going to create a custom empty material. And what we're going to do is let's drop this divided plane into the scene so we can see it. And this empty material, first, we're just going to sample the actual texture image. So this is back to using our fragment shader. And the texture 2D, right now it's default. I'm just going to drag and drop our Pleasantville image there. It needs our texture coordinate. I don't know how well this will look on a divided plane. I don't know if this one has been UV unwrapped, but we'll give it a whirl, and okay, it doesn't look too bad. Okay, so there is our 3D plane that has been divided into a bunch of vertices. That is there. Okay. Now we're going to alter its world position, its vertices, based on the color of each pixel. And we're just going to go with, let's say, how bright that pixel is, something like that. So what we'll do is we do position. This isn't a rugby ball on a pen. Oh yeah, you're getting a very old video of mine. That's why you're getting suggested that. I'm sorry, buddy. Not spinning today. All right. So the position attribute is this. Right into the world position. Obviously, we're just setting it to itself, so it's not going to do anything. But we might decide to say add something. And we'll stick with the Y position for now. So we'll say, okay, the Y is going to be based on the color. Right now, if I just did this value, it will be like based on the alpha value. We don't really want that. So I'm just going to use, for example, red. We could do like red plus green plus blue, and then that would be the result. But we'll just combine, or once again, append 3. Right? Append 3 is the node that we want to use for this. So do something like that. Let's go here. It's not going to let me do it so easily. Okay. We have to work with the logic a little bit. All right, let's see. Let me double check if it's going to allow us to do some cross calculations here. Let's see if I need to add these together. If it will let me as a result of these. Because it should still be pixel-wise, and there we go. No, but it's not going to let me add it. Ooh, Haley. I think I don't know if Effect House can handle this level of calculation. So we might have to tackle this a slightly different way. Let's see. It's not letting me connect that. Although the logic is sound, it should work. Let's see. Can't do that. There must be some way to convert. Yeah, no. It's, the vector 3 should work perfectly fine in here, but I think the operations are just slightly different. Per pixel versus per vertex, the direct relationship is not there, so it's not. I don't think it may not let us. Let's see. Okay, quick Google search and see if we can figure that out. Haley already found some limitations for what Effect House can do here. But I'll have to look at this some more, Haley, but I think the reason they're not letting me input the information from the color to the vertex is because there is not guaranteed to be an equal number of pixels as there are vertices. You know what I mean? Like the amount of pixels that are in the actual image may be different than the amount of vertices in the mesh, so they don't allow the combination. That's because I've never been able to figure out how to get an image into the vertex input. Hoped it was just that I didn't understand it enough, though, but maybe not. Yeah, no, it may not be possible. I'll look into it some more on my own, but this would be how I would have done it in Unity, so it's not letting me do it here. In Unity, it would have handled a conversion of the information, even if it was an equal one-to-one relationship between number of vertices and pixels. It would have, you know, done the relational difference. So this many horizontally divided by that many horizontal pixels, vertices, that kind of thing. That's a shame. I would have loved to see that kind of work, that in effect. That would have been cool. So I'll take a look at it later, see if I can figure a way around this. But that is that. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's just get back to this. What I wanted to show you guys was taking a lot of the information that's out there and applying it to your own systems, because unfortunately Effect House has very little information on how to make shaders. But if we go to Unity's shader graph website, so let me open up their shader graph. Let me, for example, just pull up shear node or something. Let me go up node library. This is the one I'm looking for. So Unity has a node library that's very well documented in contrast to Effect House here. This node library has hundreds of nodes, way more shader nodes than Effect House does. But all of those shader nodes are programmed, right? Just like the shader nodes in Effect House. So if we take a look at some of them, if you find one that you like from Unity, so let's say I just go into the artistic one, and here's a cool one. It's called Effect Colors, but we're looking at Vertex right now, so let's see if we can find one for vertices. So UV rotate, or for something. Radial shear is a really cool one, but let's see if we can do something different. Twirl. Okay, so there is a twirl node in shader graph in Unity. Same thing. This twirl node exists in Unreal Engine as well as Blender and other engines. Now the cool thing here is this library, the node library, which I will link to here in a second. Let me just drop the link to that in the chat. It does contain the code for how it operates, what it's actually doing. So if we have the code right in front of us, we can replicate this in Effect House. And so let's take a look at how we can make that happen. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Haley. Yeah. So how would we do something like that in Effect House? Like, some of you, like, just starting out, it seems like kind of daunting, but don't worry, let's go through it step by step. So we look through this code here and we say, okay, so the first thing that's happening is they're calculating some W. When they use the word UV, this refers to our UV coordinates. This is our texture coordinate node, essentially. My brain isn't braining. I know, Paxel. I told you this one, today's lesson will get complicated. But when they use the word UV, they're just referring to our texture coordinate. So let's do our texture coordinate here, our UV. There we have it. Okay, so when they say minus center, center is just 0.5. So let's do, and the center they use as a variable, so they mean for it to be adjustable, but you can adjust it. But generally, center is the center of the image. So subtract, so they're doing the UV minus the center, which just means 0.5. And then you can make this into a parameter called center, and then link it here, right? Link that to the variable. so that you can adjust it as you please. All right, now what's the next one? They have an angle that's being calculated. This is some strength variable. This is just a variable multiplied by some length, multiplied by the length of delta. So we are every for every calculation of every pixel, we are going to calculate some angle from the center. Essentially, that's what this is going to do. So length of delta is going to be, so one way to do length would be to do the distance. So you could do this distance, oh, not distance fade, but the distance of our UV from, why does it keep doing that? Distance from 0.5, 0.5. There you go. So we have our two lines of code already. So we have the UV minus the center, and now we have the length of our UV minus the center, which is just the distance from the center, right? Now multiplied by some strength value. So this for the second line of code, we need to multiply this by some strength value. So we create a parameter called strength. Get that parameter value, multiply it by that. Boom, there we go. All right, so we got two lines of code now completed. All right, so what's the next line? It says, so some variable x is going to equal the cos of this angle multiplied by delta dot x, so the x value of this, minus the sine of the angle multiplied by delta dot y, etc. Okay, so this is twirling is the end goal, right? We're going to twirl an image probably. So I'm going to bring in an image for this example. I'm just going to get that ready for us here so we can see it. Before, yeah, we'll do this for an image first, so it's a bit more obvious what's going on, and then you can apply that to vertices as well. But okay, so this part is a little confusing for sure, but we'll manage. Don't worry. So x is going to equal the cos of the angle that we just calculated. So this is angle. So the cos of this, cosine of this, that's line 3 that we have. So this is line 1 of our code, line 2 of our code, line 3 of our code. But line 3 is also this multiplied by delta dot x. So the delta was the first thing that we calculated, so dot x. So let's split this. Right, we split this so that we can do this kind of thing. So cos multiplied by the delta dot x, right? So that is now this portion. And we have to subtract that by this portion. So sine of the angle and delta dot y. So now we do sine of the angle multiplied by the y that we got, right? So the y, it's a delta dot y, and delta we calculated in our first line of code. All right, so we got these. Again, we're just copying this code. Now we have to subtract the first half by the second half. So we do this subtracted by this part. Boom. That is complete third line of this code. Now we have our fourth line of code. Okay, so this one is, this time it's the sine multiplied by the delta dot x plus the cos angle multiplied by delta dot y. So it's the same thing, but it just swaps around a couple of the multiplications. So the multiplications are just swapped around this time. So I'm basically just going to copy these like this, and what they're doing this time is they're going to say we're going to do the sine angle. So the sine angle multiplied by delta dot x, so sine angle multiplied by the x, and the cosine angle multiplied by the y. Whoop, multiplied by the y. And so it's that minus that. So now we have, this is our x, and it might be useful now to create some comments. So this is x equals this, right? Like that. And this is our fourth line. I'm going to comment around. This is going to be y equals. So this is our y from our code. This was just our delta. That's what they called it, right? Called a delta, UV minus center, right? These three we use together to calculate the angle. So this is angle. So commenting might help you kind of keep track of all that work that you're doing there. And I'm just gonna move these down a bit. Oh. Like so. Here we go. So we got delta line 1, angle line 2, x line 3, y line 4, and finally the output. So this goes to our color node essentially, or our sample texture 2D that we're going to twirl around if we want to, right? So the out is going to be a float 2, so a vector 2. Float 2 is the same thing as a vector 2. Okay, so it's going to be append node or a combine node. Combine node will work in this case because it's just 2. Append is when when you want to do like 3 or 4, vector 3, vector 4, that kind of thing. So this is a float 2, so we're going to append x plus center.x plus offset.x. So we're going to add these three together to create the x, and then y plus center.y plus offset.y. So offset is a variable that we can create. So I'm just going to create that variable. So that's something that the user is supposed to be able to edit, and it's a vector 2 because it has an x and a y. So offset is a vector 2. So I'm going to call this offset, and that must be something that we can alter. Okay, so we have our delta there, angle there, and what we needed was center, which is just 0.5, right? But center might be good for you to make this into a variable so you can alter it. So I'm going to do that as well instead of just sticking with the classic 0.5, 0.5. I'm going to use center instead as a variable, vector 2. Put that in there just to make it a little bit better. Okay, so now finally we're getting to our output line. Now that we have everything ready, all of our variables ready to go, we're going to say, okay, we are going to combine. The result's going to get into a combine node. So what are we combining? Okay, so the x portion is going to be x plus center.x plus offset.x. Okay, so x we calculated with all this math. So x is going to get added with offset and center. So let's move this down. Let's go offset, and we're going to split the offset like so. Let's copy the split and also split our center. So we'll say, okay, x plus center.x plus offset.x. So center.x, and then we add again offset.x. And all that together creates the x value component of our output result. Now here we're going to do the same thing. Add, and then add. So we will add this time the y plus center.y and offset.y. So it doesn't really matter what order we do that because center is just addition and addition together, boom, like so, and in the end result into the y. There we go. Looking good. Now for us to really see a twirl effect, I mean, we could do it on a basic color, but I think this would work really well in our sample texture 2D. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a sample texture 2D, excuse me, and put the output of the result here like so. the default texture. I'm going to just put the Pleasantville filter logo here like this. Okay, that looks interesting. Screen image is going to get updated with our empty material. Boom, there we go. Right now, the center is like really weird or whatnot. We haven't put the good values in. Let's go to our empty material and let's assign a center 0.5, 0.5. And then the strength is 0, which means nothing's going to change. So let's do that. And there you go. You have the famous twirl node, right? We have a very powerful twirl node, essentially programmed from scratch. Let me put that to like 0.5, right? And we have that very complicated node. Now that's insanely cool. Thank you, Haley. As you can see, it is twirling, and then we have it offset as well that we can alter all these variables here. We can alter a little bit to mess around with how the twirl effect is going to happen, but we are essentially twirling it, twirling it, twirling it, like the famous twirl nodes of all the shaders. This node was not available in Effect House, but we brought it in because we did the hard math for it. And that is the process that you can take to recreate any node that exists outside of Effect House. Bring it in here. And it's really handy to just follow the generated code example that is in our Unity shader node library. Okay. Now, to clarify, what we did, we looked at the generated code example of a shader node that we wanted to mimic. So in this case, the twirl one. And we literally just copied this and made it, translated it into Effect House. Thank you, Taylor. We translated it into Effect House, and we're now able to get this twirl effect, essentially, right? And it's going into the negative strength and stuff as well, as you can see. Right? So that math, again, is pretty like out there. I didn't know the math. I didn't know how to do a twirl node before this. I did this live for the first time in front of you, just translating the code that's generated there into Effect House. So again, let's do a quick look over the math that was done. It is a little complicated for sure, but I'm sure you guys can try and perhaps tackle one of the easier nodes at the beginning. And once you do it right the first time for one of the easier ones, it'll be really, second nature to just do it for more complex ones. So here we have step by step, kind of going through our generated code example. Oh, Taylor, thank you so much for the 13 tiny tinies. That is very kind. I'm definitely streaming something different than I usually do, as you know. But I wanted to teach people how to make some effects with Effect House. So this is more for our Discord, and the recording that TikTok will provide will be great. So we looked at a generated code stub here. UV minus center. UV is our texture coordinate, UV, subtracted by some center value. Generally that's 0.5, but you can you make that a variable. We made it into a variable this time to allow us to customize it. We then said, okay, this second line of code, we need to get this prepared. Angle. So that is the length of delta multiplied by some strength variable. So we multiply by strength, that's easy. But how do we get the length of delta? Well, we could take this delta that we already calculated and, do some so there might be a math node that lets us do length. Excuse me. There might not be a math node that does for length. Yeah, I don't think there is a math node. Okay, so unfortunately it doesn't have a length node, but we can just calculate the distance. It is from the center. Right? We can calculate the distance from the center. That gives you the length as well. That's an alternative to doing that. Oh, I'm getting a little, there we go. So that allows us to calculate the angle. Now, once we have the angle, that's line 2 down. Line 2 is down. Line 3, to calculate the x coordinate, they want us to do cos angle multiplied by delta dot x minus sine angle multiplied by delta dot y. So we already know what delta is. Delta is here. So we can just split that. Right? We split delta to x and y. And we did the whole thing. We have the angle as well, right? They just want cos angle multiplied by delta dot x. So we did the cosine of this angle that we calculated multiplied by the split, the x of delta. And then same thing they wanted us to do with sine as well. So cos angle multiplied by delta dot x, and then we subtract that by the sine angle multiplied by delta dot y. Right? So we did the subtraction. So we got our third line of code in our shader. Fourth line, again, fourth line, same concept. They just wanted us to do the sine angle multiplied by delta. You can see it here. We copied it here. And then the output that we're going to give to our the recipient of the texture coordinates usual, right? So that became a vector 2, right? That's what a coordinate needs to be. So here we had x plus center dot x plus offset dot x. So we calculated x, we calculated y. So we can just do the simple add those two together with the offset dot x, center dot x, add those to add the y together with the offset dot y, center dot y, combine them into a vector 2, put that into our UV coordinate slot. Boom, we have twirling. So you can do that with any shader node in the library. Learn how to do it yourself. Thank you for the love you, Heather. Very much appreciated. Okay, any questions? Paxnell, I'm going to have to check in on you. I'm going to pick on you because you said you were a little confused earlier, but how does it look now? Does that make sense? Kind of what we did there, translating the code. Oh, thank you for the rose, Heather. Appreciate it. Pax, all right. Pax is typing. Let's see how we did. Yeah, definitely more advanced concepts covered today. It makes sense, but as a newbie, it's really confusing, but helpful. Right on. Okay, definitely dive into it. Find what I want you to do for homework essentially is find a shader node that you find interesting in the Unity manual and try to replicate it in Shader Graph. I'm here to help, right? So if you get stuck, you have some questions, something's not making sense, feel free, reach out to me on Discord. I will try to help you. But it is crucial that you don't, forget about this thing. Like this concept that it's just fresh in your mind, tackle it, and get some practice in before you forget. Virtual Van Gogh, how'd that go for you? Ooh. I know, again, it's definitely more advanced concept, but worth diving into. Yeah, exactly, Haley. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, this is not just for Effect House, since we're covering shaders, and shaders are kind of like a universal language. You'll see these concepts in any engine that you're working with, whether it's Unity, Unreal, Blender, Maya, you name it. The concept, the knowledge that you gained here will be cross-applicable to all of them. Even like, I haven't checked out Lens Studio enough yet to know what they do with their shader stuff, if they even have it, but I'm pretty sure it will be similar. Lens Studio is similar. There you go. Virtual Van Gogh, are you still awake? So Duong and Akjoya, how was that? Does that make sense to you guys? Any part of that was particularly confusing, I can try and clear up. Okay. Now, this one, this twirl node that we made, I'm going to save this. Let me just get rid of the divided plane. We don't really use that for this one. Wonder what would happen if we did this with the position. No, that won't work. Yeah, I didn't expect that to work too well to that. That's okay. We would have to add, I think, this thing. This would be like a, let's say if we append, I'm just going to test out something real quick, mess around with the append 3. Let's see if we can make this also work in our, what's it called? This kind of space here. So I'm going to go ahead and say add this to the position attribute. And let's just see kind of what that does to our divided plane instead. And divided plane now gets this empty material that we were working on. Empty material, and then we just increase the strength. Yeah, I think it's trying to twirl the mesh now as well, which is a little bit harder to tell what's going on with that. But you can see how the mesh is being previewed here. It's being deformed quite a bit. But I think we maybe need to set the center 0.5, 0.5. Oh no, that's the offset. That's the offset. That's fine. But yeah, you can see how it's like twirling the mesh a little bit, but it's hard to see because it's all white and stuff. Let me do this here. There we go. There we go. Yeah. So there is our mesh. So again, shaders are great because they work in 3D space as well. So if we have our mesh, we can start to twirl our 3D geometry along with the image. So it's quite cool. Okay. Anyways, I'll get rid of the divided plane. I don't think that part is necessary for anyone to understand the twirling. So I'm going to save this project, share it with you guys, like so. Let me just go over to Effect House, Shader Projects, Shear Shader, Twirl Shader. Let's call this our Twirl Shader, and we'll drop that into the Discord as well. Okay, where is that? Effect House Projects, Twirl Shader, 7-zip. Boom, there we go. All right, let's see. It makes that's wonderful. Right on, Akjoy. I'm going to drop. You're unable to send messages in live chat. Ah, I see. Okay, no worries, no worries. Let's see, where is the shader dump? Okay, here we go. And I will just, this is, twirl node seems to be making things upside down though, so that's some weird logic that you might have to combat, but we'll just showcase kind of the result of this real quick. Okay, hopefully that recording makes it obvious what's going on. Twirl demo. Boom. We'll drop those two files together so kind of see what's happening with that one. All right, twirl shader with the download here. Oh. Excuse me. Gotta get over this cough soon. All right, but the twirl shader should be in the shader dump there. It'll be great you put up the recording on the YouTube. Yes, I will definitely do that. Joya, definitely. All right, so that kind of concludes today's Vertex Shader lesson, but I'm going to leave the rest of today's class for any questions that you guys want answered, any technical questions you have about anything really, Shade Effect House. So feel free. This will be a real test of my knowledge at